Good afternoon, everyone, from the rainy Sydney, and of course, good morning and good evening to some of the viewers around the globe. And welcome to the webcast on Salesforce security. We're going to be talking about resiliency as well as the risks and opportunities of artificial intelligence. So we are very excited that you can join us today, and hopefully you find this session very valuable. Also, please share your comments and questions online, and we do our best to answer them at the end of the session or later. My name is Jussi Wäre, and I'm the Vice President of WithSecure's Cloud Protection in Asia Pacific and Japan. In my past, I've been working for some of the leading technology and software companies, running the sales and leadership across multiple regions as well as globally. But most importantly, I have two distinguished guests here with me, industry, cybersecurity, and Salesforce heavyweights. I would like to welcome and introduce Chetan Sansare. So Chetan is the Senior Director for Security and Regulatory Compliance, has nearly 20 years of experience in security and excels, of course, in the Salesforce security and regulatory standards. So Chetan is definitely a cybersecurity thought leader. He is a strategist as well as the esteemed speaker in the area, and helps organizations in Asia Pacific to guide through the complexities of cyber security.
Thanks, Jussi.
At Salesforce. And also would like to warmly welcome and introduce Dr. Gayan Benedict. Gayan is the Chief Technology Officer for Australia and New Zealand at Salesforce. He is a former Chief Information Officer at the Reserve Bank of Australia. He was responsible for the technology and security operations. Gayan is also Industry Research Fellow at the MIT Sloan School of Management, and I believe you held multiple board positions as well. So warmly welcome to both of you. I'm very pleased to have you here. So today we'll segment the discussion into three key areas. One is the cyber resiliency with the software as a service. We talk about shared responsibility model, and we finish up with the risks and opportunities with artificial intelligence, and also within the context of software as a service. So we strongly encourage you to send and share your comments in the comments segment in the LinkedIn Live, and we will do our best to answer as many as possible at the Q&A section. So let's start moving. So first area is the cyber resiliency with the software as a service. So I'd like to start from a little bit higher up, and maybe question to Gayan. What are the sort of why is security so fundamental at Salesforce?
Thanks, Jussi. And first of all, great pleasure to be here. I'm really looking forward to this discussion. Salesforce is 25 years old, and when the company was founded, if you think about it, it was the late 1990s. It was a pioneer in software as a service, and there really weren't many precedents for organizations being asked to take their customer data, put it in the internet, trust it into the hands of an organization like Salesforce. And for that reason, trust became the core value of the company when it was established, and establishing trust and confidence in the security of the technology and the entire business was critical to success 25 years ago. Now, in many ways, we take that business model for granted, but very much at the beginning and at the very foundation story of Salesforce is this criticality of establishing trust through security at the heart of the design of the technology and the way it's executed and managed. And trust has sort of evolved in terms of its prioritization and how it manifests. But at the heart of it, if you don't secure software as a service capability, then all bets are off. There's no value to be had from the technology, and you're exposed to vulnerabilities. So really anyone who has a software as a service capability has to put trust and security at the center of it, because it's the basis of the usage of that software.
Thanks, Gayan. I'd like to kind of jump on to Chetan's expertise and what's your kind of a take on the impact of global regulations on the use of cloud services?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. Really excited to be here. That's a really good question. I think Gayan mentioned we pioneered a SaaS model about 25 years ago. Back then, there were very few regulations around use of cloud services. Even today, there are regulations generally around the use of IT outsourcing, offshoring. And some of them do talk about cloud, but there are very few cloud-specific regulations. But there are regulations which require us to build and deliver services to help our customers comply. And I can talk about few of these regulations. If you look at data protection and privacy laws, so we had GDPR, there's CCPA, we have the Privacy Act in Australia, there's DPDP in India, there's PDPA in Singapore. And what all of these regulations really do is they restrict how information is collected, stored, and processed. So as a cloud provider, it's important for us to understand these regulations and also comply with these regulations, and also where possible, enable our customers to comply with them. The other area that's important is around data residency or data localization. A lot of the industrial regulations in some countries require that data be stored or hosted locally, which means as a cloud service provider, it's important for us to either have local data centers or partner with global providers that have data centers in these countries so we can keep this data locally. There is also security impacts and certifications which are specific to how data is stored, processed on the cloud. There is cross-border data restrictions, so regulations could restrict the transmission of data across borders. And one of the good ways to actually navigate these requirements for cloud service providers is to have either standard contractual clauses or binding corporate rules to legalize these data transfers. And I think last but not the least, because I'm really passionate about regulations, is regulations can actually act as a driver for innovation in the industry. And hence, as we see regulations adopt and mature, we'll see a lot of cloud adoption happening as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Chetan. Can I continue on that one? So, what is actually meant by cyber resiliency? What does that mean, and how it is achieved?
I think the very simple definition of cyber resiliency is the ability of an organization, any organization, to provide or continuously provide an optimum level of service despite adverse cyber events. And it's really a combination of multiple factors. So it's a combination of strategies, protocols, technologies, if implemented the right way, that allows the organization to detect, respond to, and recover from these cyber incidents. The general principles around cyber resilience, there are a few cornerstones. Being prepared. We all rely on technology and things are going to go wrong, as we've seen multiple times. So I think it's important to have protocols and strategies to prepare ourselves in the event when something does go wrong. We need to also have good detection tools and capabilities so that we're able to detect cyber incidents in real time. Once these incidents are detected, we need to have a very robust incident response method or framework that allows us to respond to these incidents, which will also include notifications as required by data protection laws to customers, to regulators, and so on. It's also important to recover from these incidents. So having methods and processes to ensure that we are recovering from these incidents. And last but not the least, but also very important, is the adaptability. So there is always something to learn from each incident. So it's important for us to learn when these incidents happen and then build protection measures or mechanisms in place, which allows us to adapt to these incidents or similar incidents in future.
Thank you, Chetan. Moving back to Gayan. So you talk to a lot of boards, and of course, I'm sure this cybersecurity is probably top 5 topic of its board these days. Are there any sort of emerging cyber resiliency topics and discussions within executives and boards?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'd start by saying I would say cyber is probably a top 3 priority for pretty much every board globally, I would imagine, at this point. And also the executive teams, not just the boards, but also the leadership teams of organizations. And I think over the last 10, certainly 5 years, there's been a real shift. Previously, boards and executives would rely on a specific leader, the CIO or the CISO, to have all the answers and answer all the questions about cyber. That's absolutely shifted. And now board members themselves are accountable in many jurisdictions, certainly in Australia, for the cyber posture and defense and security of their organization. And so there's an appreciation they need to themselves learn about the state of risks, the state of the security and the capabilities of their organizations. And so there's a real desire for more information. Right now, as you'd expect, the topic is around the impacts of AI, because that on one hand presents a lot of threats and potentially also presents opportunities as well. So there's this sort of insatiable interest in the implications of AI on the security. But coming from a position where I think most board members and boards generally realize it's now a core accountability of themselves to be accountable for the security posture. And that gives a big opportunity for security teams and leadership teams within organizations to help educate their boards around the security landscape that they're experiencing, so that those boards can then turn around and provide support and a structure to actually create an environment which is conducive to good security. So
Right.
it's a very interesting set of conversations happening now. It's certainly matured a lot, I would say, in the even the last 5 years.
Right. And are there any sort of major concerns at the moment within the boards related to cybersecurity and the resiliency? Are there these sort of topics that are kind of unexpected that you see and hear?
Yeah, look, and it depends on the industry. Some industries, on one hand, may be sort of really focusing on particular regulatory requirements. So you have the more regulated industries, particularly concerned about some of the topics that Chetan mentioned before. Residency is an example, privacy. So they're very topical. I think AI is a concern. Boards are worried that potentially in their own organizations, people are using AI in a way which may be introducing potentially cyber risks into their organization. Threat actors may be using it against their organization. We see concerns about deep fakes and other things, subverting a lot of existing controls that organizations have put in place. It's hard to pinpoint a single thing. I'd probably say at the moment there's a general heightened state of concern around AI. But I don't think you can even underplay the general sort of geopolitical tensions that are occurring globally, and that increases, nation state threats, even for organizations that typically wouldn't necessarily be worried about that. So it's a heightened security environment. It's probably a fair way of summarizing the situation.
Right. So when we started to deploy our Salesforce instance, and we were looking at our cyber resiliency as a cybersecurity company, we quickly came back to the shared responsibility model and realized that we need to protect the Salesforce cloud from malware and phishing attacks. And that's how we actually started to deploy and develop our solution. But the protection was not the only thing to provide the resiliency. Also key for our development at the time was visibility. And we wanted to create a solution that can have full visibility of the content activity within the Salesforce that we were using. And that's why we decided to deploy a native solution which provides this full visibility of the environment. And I would say that the protection, from our perspective, protection and visibility were the key ones to really achieve this sort of cyber resiliency in that particular environment. Maybe using that one as a segue to talk about the shared responsibility model, because this is a team effort. So cybersecurity is not just a one-man show. It is a team effort between organizations and teams. Chetan, are you able to explain what the shared responsibility model is and how is it used within the industry, within the cloud industry?
Yeah, I think that's a great question and a very important point of consideration. So the shared responsibility model is a framework, for lack of a better term, that sort of delineates the roles and responsibilities between the cloud provider and our customers. And it's very important for our customers to understand what are the responsibilities that the cloud service provider takes care of, and what are the responsibilities that the customer has. Like you said, it's not a one-man job. It's a team effort. I think it's a partnership, really. And it's a partnership where the customer and the cloud service provider has to constantly work with each other. There are very particular industry terms which are quite famous now, called security in the cloud and security of the cloud. where security in the cloud is actually the security of the configurations that our customers are doing with the applications that they have, depending on which model, whether your infrastructure as a service or your use case is a platform or a software as a service. Security of the cloud is the responsibility of the cloud service provider. So this is where the cloud service provider is offering you a solution, a service that is inherently secure. And most cloud service providers, being multi-tenant in nature, they generally have a very broad set of controls which go broad and deep to provide that level of security to our customers.
Right. And when we talk about the different responsibilities, so what sort of responsibilities Salesforce is taking within this model?
Sure. So Salesforce operates in the software as a service and platform as a service mode. As such, there are a number of responsibilities that we take care of. First and foremost, the infrastructure itself. So we have a combination of first-party data centers where we own the hardware, we own the infrastructure, and hence securing these data centers, securing the servers, securing the network and communication equipment is our responsibility. Platform security is also our responsibility. So we are essentially providing an application or a platform that customers typically use to either build their applications on or run their business processes on. So ensuring that the application itself is secure, ensuring the database, the underlying services and systems are all secure is our responsibility. We are also responsible for providing encryption at rest, encryption in transit, and there are various ways to do it depending on which mode of operation we are in and which infrastructure we use. Customers also have additional options if they choose to use them to enhance security of their org. We are also responsible for business continuity, disaster recovery, high availability, performance. We are responsible for also ensuring that we have a robust incident response process in place. So we are monitoring the environment, we are detecting, responding to incidents, notifying customers, and also supporting our customers with their implementations really.
Right. And what are the responsibilities of customers within this model?
Look, the customers are ultimately the controllers for the data. They own the data that we are storing and processing on our platform. So everything from ensuring the data is collected from the end users, ensuring the accuracy of this information, ensuring how this information gets processed is a responsibility of the customer. Identity and access management. So we do offer options, but which option to choose is also responsibility of the customer. As I mentioned previously, we also have encryption options that customers can choose beyond the out-of-the-box capabilities that we provide to the customers. Any customizations, integrations that customers do, because a lot of our customers do that, they are a responsibility of the customer. Giving access to users. So really what roles, what profiles, what permission sets people need to have. Monitoring how their users are using the service, using the application is also a customer responsibility. And again, we do have a lot of out-of-the-box paid add-ons that we offer that enable the customer to actually monitor how the service is being used. Last, probably amongst many things, is API security. So a lot of our customers do integrate Salesforce services with external solutions, which could either be on-prem, be cloud-based. So ensuring the security of the API connection itself. And again, we offer various options that customers can use to do that, but that's also a customer responsibility or even a joint responsibility.
In this area, so we have a lot of discussions with our customers around the shared responsibility model. Do you see, are there any misconceptions or areas that customers often overlook?
I think the biggest one is not understanding the shared responsibility model itself. So if you do not understand what the provider is responsible for, what we are responsible for, and what you're responsible for, it really becomes hard to secure the system. Also, there are a lot of out-of-the-box capabilities from a security perspective, right? Which customers probably don't use as effectively. There is also a perception, which is gradually gone away now, but there was a perception that if I outsource something to the cloud service provider, everything is their responsibility and I don't need to really worry. But if you look at regulations globally and if you look at security standards also globally, one thing that's very clear is outsourcing does not absolve the customers of anything. They are still responsible for data privacy, protection, they're responsible for their regulation, they're responsible for customer compliance, so on and so forth. And we are just partnering, helping them with that compliance.
Right.
I got a question for you. We often will have a conversation in a security context, and the theme will often arise as to, certain things an organization's done and certain things they haven't done. And I'm sure you see this all the time, but customers using what they've purchased and acquired seems to be an issue on occasion.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point, and we've seen a lot of themes around that across APAC at least. It is really concerning when customers do not implement the technologies that they procure, more so from a security space, and I can talk about security confidently. I think there are various reasons for that. There could be an issue with lack of awareness and training. So these capabilities may be difficult for customers to implement because they generally don't know how to implement those features or capabilities. Or it could be that these features, capabilities are really too complex, and they believe that it's difficult for them, or it introduces limitations to what they really want to achieve.
What's an example, Chetan?
I think one of the good examples is probably event monitoring. We have seen a general theme where customers do procure a license for event monitoring, which is an add-on product for our CRM services. And they are either not implementing it or they have not implemented it adequately, meaning we do provide log retention. We also provide an option for customers to export these logs to their own SIEM and monitor them there so they can correlate events. We don't see them exporting these logs. We have also seen some themes where customers are not actually monitoring these logs at all. And that's very crucial. I think event monitoring is one of the crucial factors when incident response takes place, because you need to have visibility into who's done what. And if you do not have the right visibility, if you don't have the right telemetry, then it becomes really difficult for you to do that.
I think to your point, Gayan, I think from the cybersecurity company point of view, what we see is that the criminals and attackers, they do not rest, right? So they accelerate. And therefore, it's crucial that when we provide cybersecurity solutions to our customers, that they use the very latest release. The release is upgraded at the time when it's released and tested, and also that the settings are properly supporting them. So we tend to have this sort of very basic practice of having a cadence with our customers where we look at the settings, where we look at the protection status, we look at the latest threats in the industry and within our environments that we've seen, and trying to make sure that the latest capabilities protecting our customers and your customers too, right, are up to date. But it is this sort of never-ending circle and cadence. But I think it's important. It's not yet engraved in all the teams, and of course, sometimes when we work with the Salesforce teams, they are not necessarily cybersecurity experts, and that's sometimes kind of slowing things to be adopted as quickly as possible.
Yeah. I'll often get asked a question by an organization who works with us, what can we do to uplift security or improve or maximize security? And I'll always say, start with understanding what security have you got access to and what have you actually implemented. Often there is a gap there. Just bridging that gap and ensuring you're maximizing the security of the systems and the technologies that you've committed to will almost instantly give you a security uplift without having to do major new work, and then maintaining it. Because to your point, Jussi, I think the hygiene, it can be boring to leaders sometimes to always go back to the basics around patching and constantly maintaining your blacklists, etc. But if you don't do that, that's almost always where the initial attacks will happen. And so creating an operational discipline around just the hygiene factors, probably more so than anything else, will improve the security posture for most of our clients.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's move on to the final topic, which is the artificial intelligence risks and opportunities. I'd like to start with you, Gayan. How does Salesforce approach artificial intelligence in the area of security?
Sure. I mean, I think as with any mature organization with a security focus, AI has been part of the security landscape for a long time. Machine learning for decades plus has been used for basic security controls and also presented itself basic security threats. I think more recently, particularly as we've moved into generative AI, again, it's presented opportunities to Salesforce. Some of our initial uses of generative AI. We're actually looking for vulnerabilities ourselves and mitigating those. And I think a lot of forward-looking organizations have done the same thing. So it creates the ability to improve the scalability and the precision of your security controls. On the other hand, it provides that same capability to adversaries and threat actors. And as always in security, it's a contested space. If you're not taking advantage of the opportunities presented by AI, you can guarantee that your adversaries are. And so, part of our job is to stay on top of that at the forefront of understanding the threats and the opportunities, and to make sure that that's promoted to the organizations that work with us and to the broader industry. So I'd say there's good and bad. There's not an obvious winner, but it's whoever puts the most focus into it ultimately will get an advantage.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So Chetan, any risks that you see AI presenting?
I think, as with any other technology, there are risks. And there are risks which go beyond just security, especially with the use of Gen AI. So AI depends on large data sets, or to train the models that actually are working for you behind the scenes.
Yep.
Now, these data sets could actually have existing biases. And what AI could do is it could actually amplify these biases, which could result in mistreatment for certain groups or people or individuals. You also have a lot of data protection and privacy risks. Again, because AI requires a large set of data, a lot of this information could be sensitive, could be personally identifiable, and hence there's always a risk that this data is compromised or misused.
Yep.
There are security risks with the use of Gen AI because it's largely based on prompts which are again text-based. You could have adversarial attacks, which could make the LLM model, the model that actually provides you with the responses, do what it's not supposed to, right? There are deepfakes. I think we spoke about deepfakes. So we can actually get very realistic looking deepfakes, which include text, which include images, which include pictures, and they can really be used and have been used to actually do misinformation. And I think last but not the least is the ethical concerns of using AI for key decision-making purposes. And I think that's where, for example, the Salesforce Trusted AI principles, as well as the work that we're doing with global organizations, is very important in ensuring that we are using the AI for the right things and in the right manner.
Right. And maybe on the opportunities, who would like to comment on the AI opportunities?
I mean, one big opportunity for security teams is to provide them some more scale. I mean, I think it's fair to say, even with the most amount of executive and board support, there's only limited resources and funding available for security functions. And in my experience, they always have a long list of things they'd like to do if they had the time and the resources. Generative AI provides a way of getting scale. You can have a greater coverage of threats that you're potentially investigating and exploring. You could potentially use generative AI for mitigation of some of those threats. So, I mean, I look at generative AI in particular as something that provides scale and amplification and velocity to your security capability. But as we said before, definitely also provides the same to your adversary. So the one truism is you have to use it and you have to take advantage of it, because if you don't, then the risk that you have is that your adversaries will be doing that against you. And I will often say to our customers and our executives that we were working with is you don't want your first contact with generative AI to be when someone else is using it against you. That is not the right time to have your first meaningful experience with it in an organizational context.
Yeah.
I think, Jussi, if I can actually ask that question. So WithSecure is obviously a company that has been in existence for a very long time. You provide security solutions, you provide security services. Do you see opportunities where you're using or you plan to use generative AI in the products and services that you offer?
Yeah, so obviously the answer is yes. So we've been in cybersecurity business for 35 years, and close to 20 years out of those 35 years we've been using AI. It wasn't called AI at the time, but definitely it was the early steps of AI. And today, of course, we use AI big time. We handle about 4 to 5 billion customer requests every day. And to be able to identify and mitigate threats, you have to use AI these days. We have also recently started to use AI analyzing very complex cybersecurity attacks. They can be very simple, but they can be also extremely complex. And of course, AI will help the criminals also to make them even more complex. But what we are doing with AI is that we are simplifying and finding the actual threat and simplifying the counterattack for our customers so that they are better informed and better understand what's actually going underneath the hood. And this is something that we will definitely bring also to other platforms as well, including the Salesforce cloud protection. But yes, so definitely it is in the use. I have an interesting question for you, Gayan. So we have AI risks today. How do they present differently compared to the conventional security risks?
Yes, I think there is a danger that people think of AI risks as purely another category of technology risk. And so, to some extent, that is true. AI is amplifying and accelerating existing technology risks. But I think there's a growing category of AI security vulnerabilities that aren't really touching on technology. AI provides adversaries the opportunity to subvert human processes and human controls in a way where technology is not traditionally involved. There may be financial checks and processes and balances which rely on people talking to each other or sending notes to each other, which can now be faked with AI in a way where previously security controls weren't in place because it was not considered to be a technology risk. And so I think that there's this intersection of where human controls have traditionally dominated the security footprint of an organization, where AI from the adversaries is moving into those spaces. And it's really important for the security teams, whether they be technology security teams or physical security teams, to be very much conscious of AI encroaching into non-technology spaces and making sure that they're monitoring for that, they're keeping their ears open for intelligence and trying to make sure that their secures are adjusted for that.
Right, exactly right. So what we see is, of course, the increase of scale of cyber attacks through AI. And simple example is that a person in Russia can suddenly speak fluent Portuguese or Japanese or English, and that means that the threats can be generated anywhere in the world, and they can be very believable anywhere in the world. And just the true scale that is emerging with these capabilities is quite scary. And of course, then it becomes almost a battle of bad AI and good AI to find these capabilities and find these threats and threats. Any more on the AI, Chetan, that you could share what you have experienced, kind of a customer kind of expectations or customer worries in the use of AI?
I think the general concerns that we've seen is largely around the ethical use of AI, ensuring that there is no hallucination, ensuring there is no toxicity, ensuring there is no bias, ensuring the privacy and data protection laws can be honored. These are largely some of the concerns that we have seen from our customers around the use of AI. I think, as Gayan said, one of the approaches that we took is to embrace AI, but in a very careful manner, in a conscious way, to ensure that we are doing the right things. We obviously don't want to block AI. There is a huge potential and a huge opportunity where a lot of these low-hanging fruit, low-impact tasks can be done by AI, and the organization can focus more on the strategic things that they need to do. So there are a lot of opportunities for AI. It's obviously changing very rapidly as we speak. It's a very evolving landscape. So I think it's, from a customer landscape, I think it's mostly both. It's being cautious, being careful, but also seeing where they can use AI to automate some of the things that they traditionally humans have been doing.
Perfect. Thank you, Chetan and Gayan, for very insightful comments and questions. I think it's time to move on to the Q&A section of the webinar, and let's just see if we have any questions online. So one of the questions that I have is that do you see lots of differences in security approaches, maybe within different regions or within the industry segments?
I think yes. There are certain industries which are highly regulated. So you look at financial services, you're looking at public sector, you're looking at healthcare industry. These industries are generally heavily regulated because of the nature of data that's stored and processed as part of these use cases. Regionally as well, as I said, there are certain regions which could have data residency or data localization requirements. There are certain regions that have their own requirements around assessments. For example, we have the IRAP program in Australia, which is an assessment program. There are similar programs in the US around FedRAMP. We have the C5 in Germany. We have the UK Cyber Essentials. We have ISMAP in Japan. So there are certain regional requirements. They could either be certifications or assessments, but there are certain regional requirements and hence differences between how you would implement security controls or how you would comply with these regional requirements.
The only thing I'll add to that, I think perhaps paradoxically, those industries that are more regulated, you would typically think being more cautious around how AI is being used, which is definitely the case. But I think it's a real possibility that workers and staff in those organizations are in many cases desperately keen to use AI. So I think you see a lot more shadow AI in places where AI is highly constrained and locked down. And there's a real risk in those regulated spaces that developers and coders or just general business users are potentially using in their own devices, exfiltrating data, in their own case to use on their own devices and then, bringing them back onto their work devices in order to get advantage of the power of AI. But as we, as Chetan mentioned before, that introduces a whole manner of risks as well. So I think there's potentially a false security in the regulated industries where there's very tight controls around the use of AI, because I fear sometimes that is pushing users and organizational individuals to go off reservation, so to speak, use the AI that's available to them on their consumer devices, whatnot, potentially expose the organization to a whole manner of risks. And so I think that's something to be cautious about. It's such a compelling capability and it's so accessible for many people that I think simply knowing that you have security controls in place and that you're applying, regulatory rigor doesn't guarantee the fact that it's not being used in a way which is, contrary to your risk appetite.
I have a personal question on topic that I face quite a lot. So, of course, we work a lot with Salesforce organizations, so your customers who run Salesforce and look for added protection. But sometimes there are also the CISO teams which are not experts in CRM. So are there any best practices to that these organizations could follow and making sure that the CISO teams' concerns are taken care by the CRM teams and vice versa maybe?
I mean, I'll lead. I think the model we probably see most prevalent is the existing BOSO concept. When you've got a business information security officer, if you have the luxury of having a security team that's, large or at least focused on business functions, and often that aspect of the business which accommodates or owns Salesforce may have a security person or team associated with them. And that's often the way that security processes and considerations come into the ongoing deployment of Salesforce. But not everyone has that.
I think one of the things that we often ask for is to get security involved earlier on in the cycle. Typically, what tends to happen in most cases is security is often involved when the contracts are being negotiated. But I don't think that's the right time to actually involve security, because there's such a large amount of sensitive data that gets stored and processed on our platforms. It is important for our customers' business teams to involve security upfront and have those conversations. It's also important for the security teams to understand the application that is being used, not just the data, but also which applications are being used, in what use cases they're being used for, any internal, external integrations that are going to be used or implemented, because they need to have this holistic view of the system to do a good job at assessing the security of the data that the system is going to store and process.
Right. So we are almost out of time. So I would like to thank both Chetan and Gayan for sharing your insights and hosting us at this lovely Salesforce Tower in Sydney. I'd like to thank also our audience. So thank you for joining us today. We will share the recording of this session in due course at the WithSecure.com website. And if you have any further questions, you can certainly reach out to us, all of us. We are happy to receive your questions and answer and have a conversation. And other than that, I would like to say again, thank you, to our visitors, and have a great day.